finding out your partner has a taste for depraved pornography, and then imagine it's worse than that. It involves children. Well, that's what happened to our next guest. Natalie Walker was just 23 when she discovered her husband had been viewing child abuse material online. In shock, she sought support from friends and the community, only to find the support wasn't there, so she created it herself. Natalie joins us to share her story now. It's nice to see you today. I read your story with just this violent sense of unease last night. I can't believe you were faced with this. 23, how did you find out that your husband was looking at child pornography?
Thanks, Sarah. So we had a mutual friend that serviced our computer regularly, and one day my ex-husband's group of friends came to stay with us in Melbourne, and this friend took me aside and said, "Hey Natalie, we know there's always a lot of pornography on his computer, but this time there's something different. It's children."
Oh, how did you react to that?
So, as I said, his friends had just arrived. I think there was 4 of them there for the long weekend.
Were they shocked?
Well, it wasn't shared with all of them, just me.
Just you.
Which retrospectively, I look back and think, why was it my responsibility to do something about this? But when this happens, you've never imagined this happening to anyone in the world. And so you're in absolute shock and you have no idea what to do. And so I was in shock and I felt ill, but I also didn't want to confront him in front of all of his friends in our house. So I just sat on it for the long weekend until they left on the Monday.
And so then what happened?
Then I confronted him.
How did you do that? What was the space about when you did that? You're home alone with him?
Yes, and I told him what his friend had said. I think I went digging around on the computer. This was back in 2002, so we weren't as computer literate as we are now. And I did find some evidence in emails that backed up the claims that the friend made.
Did he deny it?
No.
What did he say? What was the reason?
There was no reason. He didn't deny it. He knew that I knew.
That was wrong?
Yes.
And so then what happened? You stayed, like, did you leave him at that point?
Not immediately, but we did separate shortly after. And the last time I saw him, which was about 15 years ago, I took him aside and I said, "There's something you need to know. I'm launching this organisation. This is what we do." And he said, "Well, that's not very surprising, Natalie." I mean, he'd lived with me and loved me, so he knew there was no point trying to stop me from doing what I was doing. And I also said I was going to tell his partner.
Could he justify doing that? Did he try to justify?
He didn't, which is unusual. So now my story has taken me to hear the stories of thousands of other partners and family members in this situation. And I do hear a lot of justifying and minimising. I was just looking, it was an accident. Someone sent it to me in an email. I clicked on the link. And then when law enforcement go in, there's like tens of thousands, even millions of images sometimes.
Did you, I know there was an MP, I think it was, in Victoria who told the same story and the terrible issue where she realised she had to report her partner, I think he was also the father of her kids, to the police for this. Did you have to make that decision? Did you report him to the police or no, and why?
I did, and Rachel Carling-Jenkins' story is really the epitome of why I do what I do now. When she told her story to Parliament and then the media, her ex-husband, there was about one line in the paper that said he was sentenced to 4 months, but there was pages and pages and pages about her. She was harassed in the streets. She couldn't leave her home for some time. And so the message that we gave that perpetrator and his non-offending partner was, if you're a perpetrator, you'll get half a sentence in media. If you're the affected family member who finds it and reports it to the police, we're going to hound you in the streets.
This is what I found so distressing about your story, was that after you found out about your ex-husband, you sought comfort from friends and they weren't there for you. Is that true?
It's true, and it's common. So one of the reasons we didn't separate immediately while we were separated under one roof is because that weekend I called my the best friend that I had in Melbourne. We'd not long been in Victoria, and I said, can I just stay with you for a weekend? And I told her what happened. And we were close enough that I was on the list of people that could pick her child up from school or out of school care. And she just said, no, I don't want to be involved. And from that moment, I knew it had to be me.
I think the most shocking thing that I read is that often women feel like their husbands are cheating and they go digging around looking for a smoking gun, an email from a lover, and they often find these depraved images. Did you ever have any inkling that perhaps your husband was doing this? And you were talking a little bit about the ad break gaslighting and how these sorts of people, they plant the seed, they groom you to sort of make sure it's almost like that it's normal. Tell me what your husband did.
Was he weird sexually?
He was really gregarious. He was in his occupation is one that is really respected. When we became an item, all my friends at school wished they had a boyfriend like that. And he was kind and generous, and you would never have picked anything strange about him. And I think that's part of the really dangerous myth, is that this person is a monster. They'll have a flashing light on their head. We would know. And actually, the rate of prevalence is actually really devastating. It's 3 to 4% of men have accessed child abuse material at some stage. So there's no flashing light. And when we say to the partner, how did you not know? It's because we're trying to convince ourselves that if it was me, I would know. But by putting that on her, we're shaming her and we're sending the message like we did to Rachel Carling Jenkins.
No, at all. I mean, so you could not pick it. You could never have picked this unless you were told and then saw the evidence yourself. You could never have picked it by the way he acted.
And this is what you really want to know, even when we're talking about that this is the most problematic question that women face. It's still bursting out of you. And so my challenge is to the panel and to everyone to ask, why is he doing this? Not how did she not know. So I will answer your question
Because it's relevant to what,
conversation.
because it is relevant to the audience you're trying to get to. So that is why I'm asking.
I think what you're trying to say, though, is that the blaming shifts to the victim and the wife, who often has no idea that her husband's a monster.
I think that really I know exactly what you're trying to say, which is there's this absurd thing where people seem to be conflating this with having an affair or even indeed just looking at adult porn and why, how could you not know there was a problem with your marriage and if your husband's having an affair? This is completely different. This is an awful criminal activity that actually encourages child abuse. It is a stepping stone often to actual pedophilia, and it seems absurd to me that the partner should be kind of blamed for not knowing or even blamed for turning on her husband. Is that the bit that you find?
Well, we all have phones. Do any of us have any idea what our partners or children or neighbours or bosses or colleagues are doing on their phone? So in my case, which is not uncommon, I thought something might have been up. And so like the stories you mentioned, Sarah, I went looking for evidence of online cheating or an affair. In Rachel's experience, she thought that he might have been looking at some pornography that bothered her. So I had a hunch there was something, but never, I had never even thought about child abuse material. And back in 2002, media hadn't, courts hadn't, magistrates didn't understand what it was. So I thought maybe there was something going on, but never could I have imagined that it was videos of children being sexually abused.
Can I ask, was he prosecuted? Did police take the report seriously and pursue him?
He wasn't, and that speaks to the prevalence of this issue. In the community, we think if we accidentally click once, the police will be knocking down our door. But when you think about that statistic I gave you of 2 to 4% of men looking at child abuse material, and the sheer volumes of that material now. We've moved on from terabytes to petabytes. That's a lot of material to investigate. And law enforcement are the first to say that this is not an offence we can arrest our way out of. And so Partners Speak offers expertise, and the families that we work with, and asking them what have they learned, what could they share with law enforcement. Our government's done a fantastic job of launching a national centre to counter child abuse material. We're strengthening laws so that the sentences are harder for people who commit offences like this. But the next step is to work with the families, to work with the communities who have this going on in their home.
And you actually reached out to your ex-husband's new wife because he was very quickly remarried after you divorced and now has children of his own.
Correct.
Did she reply?
She did not. I had occasion to see her once at a family event. It was the last time I saw either of them. And as I say, it was over 15 years ago now. And I said to her, it's not appropriate for us to have this discussion here. May I just check that you received my email, that you read it in full and that you understand? And she said yes.
Wow. It is just mind-blowing that people can have these secret lives and they can be living in your own home. That's why a support group like yours is so important. If you are affected by any of the issues raised in this segment, make sure you go talk to a trained support worker at Partners Speak by calling 1300 590 589. It is not your fault. And also go to their website, partnerspeak.org.au. Natalie Walker, wow, you're an amazing woman.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alrighty, thank you. After this very short break, we're changing.